Alright, so I've played a bunch of Wadjet Eye games this year, and about Blackwell specifically, I'll say it straight up. I recommend all 5 games. They are of very similar quality of puzzles and content. First one is a bit rough, but it's still good. Art style and music improve with each iteration. Fun little detective games. What are they about? Rosangela Blackwell is a woman with a tragic past. Even as a young girl, she was bereft of happiness. Both parents lost at a young age. She was tossed to her aunt, who only a few short months later faced problems she couldn't handle and was committed to a mental institution. Raised an orphan, and now, nearly 2 decades later, losing her last family member. All alone, but not for long. Soon enough, she seems to have the same delusions her auntie had. Joey Malone. Joined by an unlikely companion, the duo is set to solve mysteries of people's deaths and act as the last hope for their salvation. Rosangela Blackwell, a bestower of eternity. I don't know why, but it just feels right to do a voice for that. So the general loop is figuring out the info about the ghosts and then forcing them to confront the reality of their departure. Jumping from place to place and finally confronting the big bad of the episode. The overall ride is somewhat formulaic, for whatever, but very well done, and honestly I wish there was more. What did I like? First of all, a bit of general info. Point-and-click games aren't the most popular kinds of games, and I think it has a lot to do with how they are made. Frequently they operate on what is known as moon logic. Okay, I have allergies right now. Which means that a lot of puzzles are boiling down to solutions what a million monkeys with typewriters wouldn't be able to replicate. So it always boils down to rubbing X on Y and hoping it works. I've often played these kinds of games as a kid, but over a decade since entirely forgot they even exist. This series was what reinvigorated my interest. Wadjet Eye Games, and specifically Dave Gilbert, created these games, and they are very straightforward. A lot of it is about talking to people and figuring out the right thing to say. Some clues are combining and yielding different results. And it's all very much possible to figure out without a walkthrough. If more point-and-click games were done like this, I bet the genre would be a hell of a lot more popular. Second thing is the characters. The main duo is just great. The awkward nerd Rosa and wise as Joey work great together, and I wanted to follow them around to see how they react to different things. A bunch of times you can switch the character and click on a random object, getting an entirely different description. It's a minor thing, but it adds so much character. For example, Rosa can easily point out that this screen is probably a computer. Meanwhile, Joey would call it a strange TV due to being from the past and dead for a while. Honestly, I'd want more Blackwell games which are just these two doing whatever without any overarching plot. And another thing to praise are all the other characters. These murder mysteries could be lazy and boring. They could be about action or some complicated method of murder or some stupid plot twist or something else. No, instead it's just the story of a person and their misfortune. Everyone has their troubles, and if they were actually happy and well adjusted, they wouldn't be stuck around as a ghost in the first place. People's passing can leave quite a mark on anyone, and Rosa has to slowly piece together their life story. I loved that, especially because that's the kind of approach which isn't really a murder mystery. It's like some sort of backwards biography writing simulator. And the thing is, that's pretty much all there is in the game. The main duo, the people they investigate, and the way they do it. I've praised the meat of the game, but there's a bit more to it. What did I dislike? So the important thing is that these games are episodic. There isn't really too much continuity between the games. Obviously there's an order, but you can play them in a random order and not really miss much context. They stand on their own, but they all end on a dramatic note, and I do not care for it, not one bit. Every single one of these tries to end on an epic fight with a big bad, and I just don't care at all. Of course I want to know who they are and why they did what they did, but it is so overblown that I just don't care. I care about the people, their stories, and having someone like Rosangela being thrown into the confrontation against whatever is just not fun. Leave fighting demons to someone else. Also, some parts might be bad. I don't have a more polite way to put it. The first game starts with a player being told to get into their apartment, and they get denied by a guy with the most punchable face in gaming after Bobby Kotick. It's such a stupid idea for a puzzle and an obstacle. I despised it, and honestly, if that was how I started Blackwell, I might not have tried any of the other games. But thankfully the games were ordered alphabetically, and the first one was actually the third in the list. So I knew that better stuff is to come. And speaking of, the developer's commentary actually comments on that, and Dave Gilbert, the dev, says what he very much wanted to George Lucas it and change everything, starting with that exact scene. It probably would have kept him from making more games, so thank God he didn't do it. Still, it's good to know that he acknowledges the flaws there and wishes he could have done better. The commentary is great, and I loved playing with it. It's like playing with a friend who already played through and offers little tidbits here and there. Perfect for someone who is desperately lonely. So, I still love these games, but they do have problems. I recommend them and all Wadjet Eye games in general. At worst, they are average. At best, I'd say these are the best point-and-click games around. And that's a pretty high bar.